Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kori Bush. Hey,
Jamal Bowman.
and we just want to come and let you
Jamal
know
Bowman.
something spectacular.
And we
that's
just
about
want
to
to come
go
and let you
down.
know something
We are
spectacular
starting
that's
our
about to
own
go down.
Substack.
We are
It's
starting
called
our own
The Capital
Substack.
Events, y'all.
It's
the
called
Capital Offense.
The
And
Capital
question
Events, y'all.
Is it
the
capital
capital
offense,
offense.
or
And the
is
question
it
is it
Offense?
capital offense
Is
or
it
is it
double,
offense?
quadruple?
Offense.
Is it double, quadruple,
I guess it
quintuplet?
depends on the day. It depends on the hour.
It
But
depends on
you
the
wanna
day.
be a part
It
of our
depends on the
Substack.
hour.
So
But
go
you want to be a
ahead
part of our
and
Substack.
subscribe.
So go
Be a
ahead
part of this
and
movement.
subscribe.
Peace and love, y'all.
Be a part of this movement.
Peace and love, y'all.
Peace and love.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you could hear that video. I was kind of messing with my sound this morning. I am Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap, running a few minutes late this morning. Unfortunately, Colonel Joe Adams is not going to be joining us this morning. As you guys know, he's a busy, busy man. He's got a lot going on, but we'll catch up to him next week. Can't wait to talk to him. I'm running a little bit late. I spent the last 10 minutes coughing, so I'm like, I can't go on and cough the whole time. Good morning, Dottie. Hope you're doing well. And I wanted to play that quick video. Of course, that was Kori Bush. And what was so funny is when that video first started, I don't really even know what a Substack is, quite honestly. But when I first saw that video, I was fully waiting for, we're going to prison. Nope, they're starting a Substack, whatever that might be. Probably something else to make money. Good morning, Karen. And I can't stand Kori Bush. I don't feel bad saying that. She has done such a disservice to this country and led people in such a wrong direction. It's just beyond upsetting. And then now she's, I'm going to start a Substack with her little guy friend. After they just stole money from Missourians, they just literally stole money from Missourians, as most of us know, especially if you're in the St. Louis area. But since Kori Bush, of course, is a very public person, probably everyone across the country knows that they took out allegedly fraudulent loans. She was paying her, I don't think they're married, I think it's her boyfriend, to be her security, at some super extravagant rates, just complete overuse, terrible, 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 terrible. We've got terrible people that live in this world. But I have a few things to talk about, nothing too crazy. I am not going to have a show Thursday or Friday. I think I've worn myself out this week. I started out really great on Monday and felt absolutely normal. Then by Tuesday, a little bit worse. Today, way worse. I don't know if any of you, it's weird when you have like, as you guys, some of you know, most of you know, if you're listening to this show, that I had a two weird bacteria that somehow made their way into my lymph nodes in my chest and the mediastinum area and into my lungs. I had 4 nodules in my lungs. I don't know how many are there that now. When they did the biopsy, they couldn't reach two. They couldn't reach 3 of them. They were able to reach 1. And so what worries me is that, once you get a biopsy and they kind of puncture, that little area of abscess, I'm kind of worried it might be spreading. I don't know, but I don't know. Good morning, Michelle. Hope you're doing well. So I've been coughing all morning. I woke up yesterday at 3 o'clock in the morning, like in a flat out sweat. And then this morning, I don't know if you guys have ever had one of those mornings where you're just sleeping so good. I was sleeping and dreaming all this crazy stuff. And if you know me, I don't sleep at all. I'm usually up by 4 a.m. I go to bed around midnight. I'm up, by 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and maybe 5 o'clock, something along those lines. I'm not a sleeper. This morning, man, I was sleeping so good that my alarm went off. And I know I always wake up before my alarm. But even when my alarm went off, I had to hit the snooze button. I thought, Colonel Adams is coming on. I don't really need to do too much prep. And then, of course, he couldn't. I'm like, oh no, which is perfectly fine. I just chatter anyway. But I am like sweating really bad and coughing all this junk up. So I'm gonna have to call my doctor's office and probably take it easy the next couple days. I probably just need another round of antibiotics. I don't expect it to be anything too crazy. But I was telling you guys on Monday how I think it's really strange. Like my doctor, who is an infectious disease doctor and a cancer specialist, lung cancer specialist at St. Louis University, this guy is a fantastic doctor. He's, as you know, St. Louis University, they're a teaching hospital. The doctors there are really good, some of the best in the world. And he's only seen this one other time, the type of bacteria that I had. He's like, I have no idea how this bacteria made it into your lymph node, or into your lungs. And if you look it up online, it's almost completely unheard of, and it causes some really bad infections, but it's a bacteria that just normally lives in your mouth, or on your skin, and it just doesn't typically find its way into your lungs or into your lymph nodes. And but what's really crazy about this, good morning, Peggy. And Peggy, am I taking ivermectin? Peggy, that's a good question. I haven't, because I didn't even think about it, because I was thinking, well, it's bacteria versus, parasitic or, fungal, but maybe, maybe bacteria infections are also parasitic or fungal to some degree. So maybe that's a good course. Trust me, I have a lifetime supply of ivermectin, so I can definitely, grab some and take it. Good morning, Linda. You slept better also. You were in the hospital a few weeks ago. Oh, I didn't know that, Linda. I had no idea. Well, I hope you're doing well. Good morning, Glassnut. I'm glad you guys are suggesting the ivermectin, because I'll tell you what, it never hurts to try. I have complete confidence in ivermectin for curing a lot of, I got to be careful with that C word, helping with a lot of different things. Linda, I had over 2 weeks of IV antibiotics outpatient. Oh my goodness, Linda, what in the world? We'll have to talk about that. I had no idea. If you have to get IV antibiotics as an outpatient, that's a very serious situation, of course. And I've not had to go that route. I've been taking, just pills, oral antibiotics, amoxicillin in particular. But like I was saying on Monday, this is such a strange, bacteria that I have. It's in where it is. The bacteria itself isn't strange. Where it was strange. It's almost unheard of. And but yet, is it really all that unheard of? Because I said on Monday that I was coming across all these people who somehow all of a sudden have a lung abscess. A lung abscess is not common. It's not something you see all the time, and especially with these strange bacterias. And then, sure enough, late last night, I was kind of scrolling through, my social media pages, and I came across another person who is in the ICU because they have some type of lung abscess. And then I heard from somebody else I know who also told me, they're like, you know what? I just had almost the same thing. And I'm like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why, and is it a situation where I just didn't notice it before? Maybe it's always been going on and just now I'm taking notice, but I don't think so. Because when I was first having these lung issues, I joined a couple of groups, social media groups about people with lung nodules and what they call, I'm sure I'm not saying it right, but adenopathy, is that what they call it? When you have the enlarged lymph nodes, which for me is like from here down to here, this whole tract through here is enlarged. Which is kind of an unusual place for them to be enlarged also. And so I did all this research, was doing all this reading, and not one time did I come across people who were having all these different lung abscesses, excuse me, and things like that. And now all of a sudden they're just coming out of everywhere. And one thing I thought was interesting, which I'm sure is not related at all, is the one person who contacted me and was talking about what they just recently went through, almost the same track and path that I went through. We were both not together, but we were both in the North Carolina, Georgia, Blue Ridge Mountains when Hurricane Helene came through. It probably nothing to do with that, but I did think that was really strange. And a couple of people I know who are in the ICU right now with something very similar are also in that same general region, which I think is just really weird. Like, does it mean something? Does it not mean something? It's very strange. It's very strange. So something I'm going to keep an eye out on and see what's happening. But in the meantime, like I said, I almost didn't do the show today because I thought, man, Colonel Adams isn't coming on. And I was coughing for 10 minutes straight, sweating like bullets. And I'm like, but I'm going to do it because there's some things I want to talk about today that really can't wait. And one of the things and we're going to talk more about this, by the way, not, this isn't about me, I'm just going to be talking more about health. You know, uh, so many people I know are struggling with these different health conditions. And I find the more research I do, and I'm continuing to research, As a matter of fact, it used to be that I would stay up all night and read about politics, and I still do, but now it's more I'm reading about health and self-sufficiency. And I was just explaining, to my son yesterday. I said, the goal is to obviously be so self-sufficient to where if the power goes out, it doesn't matter. If your vehicle isn't running, it doesn't matter. If something crazy happens and the grocery store is closed, it doesn't matter to you. You're just, going on about your business. And, and that's my goal. And my goal is, of course, is to become healthier. I think that's the goal for all of us. And no one in my family understands the reason. Everybody's like, why? My son's like, why do you spend so much money, on the garden? Why are you worrying about all these vegetables? And, why are you worrying about the weeds in the garden, all this other stuff? And I'm like, because when you go to the grocery store and you buy food, it's poison. It's not just that I'm a hobbyist, and because trust me, I'm a terrible gardener, absolutely terrible, and I'm not good at it at all. It's a learning process for everyone, I think. A learning process. As I've kind of been diving into this gardening, people are wondering what in the world I'm doing. Why all of a sudden do I care about this? And why am I worried? It's because we're filling our bodies with poison. That's what it's about. People are like, well, why do you want chickens? Chickens are so messy and blah blah blah. Because we're filling our bodies with poison when we go to the grocery store, and because chickens allow you to be self-sufficient. Now, I do go out and buy some good chicken food for my chickens. I buy scratch greens and things like that, but I wouldn't have to do that. I do it because it's easier. Somewhere down the road, let's say if something crazy did happen, I could just let the chickens free range. I wouldn't have to do any of that stuff, and then supplement, of course, what they're finding ranging. But if you can have your chickens and you have your garden, well, you're going to be feeding your garden scraps to your chicken. You're going to allow some of your chickens to go through the compost. That's what a lot of self-sustenance people do. And there are ways where that works out in itself, where you're not spending a lot of money to take care of chickens. But I'll tell you what, if you have chickens, you have food. The worst catastrophe can happen, as long as, of course, it's not a bomb, dropping right on your house or your chicken coop. And you're always going to have food, because those chickens, are going to lay eggs very consistently. Now, there might be a couple months out of the year where they're molting and they're going through that phase where they're not laying eggs. But there are ways in which you can have chickens lay eggs year round. You can keep two separate chicken coops, I've heard people doing. And in one chicken coop, you leave a light on for 16 hours during those winter months, and your chickens will continue to lay eggs during that time. Or you can make sure you feed them extra protein. There's a lot of ways around it that, we can get into another day. Good morning, Mary. Good morning, Scott. But if you have chickens, you're always going to have your food, because they're going to continue to lay eggs, which is a great source of protein. If you have a rooster, which I don't, you're even going to have more chickens. It's an endless supply of chickens that you can raise for feed, or you can raise for eggs. So that's the reason why I keep chickens. And I don't think anyone in my family understands my deal with the chickens. They're like, oh, it's that old smelly chicken coop and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, the chickens give us eggs, give me eggs. So that's what's important there. But, we're just poisoning our bodies every day. Every day I see stories of people I know on social media, or people I talk to, or who are sick. They're sick from this, sick from that. And, like myself, their diet isn't the best. My diet hasn't been the best. And I haven't done the best job I could be doing by making sure I have healthy fruit, healthy vegetables, and so on. And that has to change, hopefully, for all of us, not just me, because I'll tell you what, this infection that I have going on, I've had enough of it. I'm like standing here, you can't see it, but I'm like sweating up a storm. And that's because that's infection in my body. My body's working overtime to try to get rid of it. And thankfully, my body can work on it. Now, if you guys saw my video I played yesterday with Dr. Artis, I was in a rush to end the show, so I didn't get to talk about it too much. But like he said, if you're eating sugar, if you're drinking sodas with sugar in them, if you're eating cakes and cookies and all the things we all like, well, guess what? That suppresses your immune system, and that allows infections like what I have, or like what some other people are getting it allows it to take over. It feeds the parasites in your body. And sugar plays such a crucial role in everything. I remember Dr. Eric Naputi. I'm sure most of you guys know, if not all of you, who Dr. Eric Naputi is. And when I was on the War on COVID, a show a couple of years ago, when at of course, when COVID first started, he would come on and we'd talk about sugar and sugar's role in the COVID process and people who, why it affected people who were diabetic, to such a degree. And when you eat sugar, your body is weaker, you're more susceptible to inflammation. And considering that glucose takes radio tracers ahead of a PET scan directly to areas of tumor, inflammation, infection, etc., to me, that says a lot. That means when you're ingesting sugar, guess where it's going? It's going right to those spots in your body. And I don't know which comes first, the inflammation, or the sugar, or the opposite way. But either way, I think it's a big sign that we're doing things wrong. Ray, it has to take its course. The body is asking for rest. I agree, Ray. That's exactly what my body is going to be doing. My hair is like soaking wet before I came on the show, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do a show today. But we've got things to talk about, and we're going to talk more about these things as time goes on. And we're going to be talking about gardening and bees and some of the things I'm really, hundreds of thousands of bees have died recently. Of course, this happens continuously, but recently, hundreds of thousands of bees have died. What are we doing to ourselves? Do you really need a pretty lawn that well? Do you really need to kill weeds at the expense at the expense of humanity? Because and trust me, I'm not one of these climatologists, God knows that. But when it comes to the bees, we need bees to survive, but yet we're killing the bees with pesticides. There are studies being done by beekeepers who claim that their bee colonies have died because of chemtrails. I can't attest to the truth or untruth of that because I don't know, but it seems pretty truthful to me because we know they're spraying poison in our skies. And I really wish that the Trump administration would address that. I know that Robert Kennedy Jr. has talked about it a little bit, but we need to talk about it a lot more. We need to figure out a plan for the bees. And I don't know that I have it in me or the time to manage bees right now. It's something that I would really like to do, and I think we should all have a beehive. I really do, because we got to just take it upon ourselves, is how I kind of feel right now, that our government is doing everything they can to kill the bee population, probably because they would rather us not produce our own food. They would probably rather grow lab food. And maybe that's where things are heading in their perspective. And that's another thing I haven't really heard much on the Trump. I know the Trump administration's very busy. Trust me when I say I know that. But I wish that some of these things would come more to the forefront, and I'm kind of frustrated with Donald Trump today. And I feel like we have to talk about this. And I'm kind of at this dilemma inside where I'm like, I am extremely upset with him right now, extremely upset with something that is going on. And we're going to talk about that. But what do you do? Because I love Donald Trump. I think he's an absolutely fantastic president. I'm always trying to tell myself, you have to trust the process. You just have to, you don't necessarily understand it, but you have to trust it. But what happens when you reach that point where you're like, no, this is just not okay. It doesn't matter. I don't trust this process. All the other ones, yes. This one, no. And it's not that I'm never going to be against Donald Trump. I'm always going to think he is the best president maybe we've ever had. And I still think he has the heart of gold, and he's trying to do everything he can to help Americans. That's honestly what I believe. But sometimes even the people you really like do something you don't like. We've all been there, right? And that's kind of how I feel right now. Crew, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, not our friends. Thank you, crew, for knowing exactly where I'm going. I really like Prince bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He is against corruption. And whenever his father stepped down and he stepped in, he arrested almost all of his father's friends for corruption. There was I don't know, almost 400 people that were arrested and charged, with that type of corruption that took place under his father's rule. And I liked him at that time. It's not that I don't like him now, but they're not our friends. And crew, you're right, they are not our friends. I might like what he's doing. I might like that he's tackling, this in Saudi Arabia. And I think it's Jay. I haven't seen Jay on yet this morning, but I think Jay spent some time maybe living in Saudi Arabia and would probably pipe in a little bit, but they're not our friends. And Qatar is absolutely not our friend. And yesterday we talked a little bit about the plane that Donald Trump is to receive. And at the time, there was a lot of people surrounding Donald Trump who said that it's not true, that that this plane is not coming to us. It's what we're hearing is just not true. It's fake news. And quite honestly, I could care less about this plane. I really could. It's like a 747-8 jumbo. I don't even know what all that means, but it's a 747. It's got the extra deck on top. And they said it's completely outfitted, absolutely beautiful, $400 million plane. Donald Trump released a statement that said, hey, the plane is not for me, it's for our country. Air Force One is outdated. And that's true. It is outdated. And I'm accepting this plane for all of America. And I don't really have a problem with the plane. I could care less about that. What I do have a problem with is this. And we're definitely going to talk about this. This is what I have a problem with. Do you see this man? This man is a terrorist. Do you see how there's a $10 million reward on his head? Do you see that? Mary says, don't we have to be friends to do business or stay at peace? Maybe, Mary. Brenda says, it's a gift to Defense Department. Exactly, Brenda. I have no problem with the plane at all. I think it's a beautiful plane and we need it. We need the plane. But so this guy is the same as this guy. These are the same people. Now he's, renamed himself. Al Jalani, that was his terrorist name. The Ahmad al-Sharaa, that's his presidential name. This man is a terrorist. There's no way around it. This man is a terrorist. Do you know how many American lives this man has taken? It's a lot. I'll tell you that. It's a lot. And here, all of a sudden, now we're friends with this guy. We want to buddy up to this guy. And I get it. I'm going to show you Trump's welcome into Qatar here in a moment, too. So we're friends with this guy now. And I don't get it. Here's, you can listen to Donald Trump's speech, the one that upset me so greatly. And then we're going to talk about this a little bit.
After discussing the situation in Syria with the Crown Prince, your Crown Prince, and also with President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East. Friends of mine. I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what is happening with my settings, but it was changing. And I'm like, right in the middle of talking, like, why is this happening? All right. Well, hopefully you guys were at least able to hear that video. I think you could. I'm upset because why are we dropping the sanctions against Syria? Why do we want to be friends with Syria? And I understand Trump's perspective. I think I understand what he's trying to do, because the first thing that he did is talk to Crown Prince bin Salman about creating better relationships with Israel, with Netanyahu. And I understand that's probably his objective, is creating peace in the Middle East. Because if there's anything that Trump wants, it is peace. He's trying to create ceasefires, of course, between Israel and Hamas. He's trying to create peace between India and Pakistan. He wants to create peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia and Syria. I understand that that is his goal. Good morning, Rob. But at the same time, is it also about oil? Is it also about money? Because we know that the Syrian government, they control a lot of oil. And we've been in Syria for many years against the wishes of Bashar al-Assad, of course, the former president of Syria. But maybe this is just, my thinking. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay to admit it if I'm wrong. But right now, as we stand here talking, the Syrian government is killing Christians. They've been going since they took over. They ran Bashar al-Assad out of the country. He protected the Christians. He was a Christian Alawite himself. He celebrated Christmas. And I was so upset, if you guys recall, some of you were here with me, when this happened, when Syria unfortunately fell to what? To terrorism. These people are terrorists. Remember when we used to fight against terrorists? These same people in Syria that took over the country, it's no different than the Taliban taking over Afghanistan. No different at all. These people are terrorists. They have killed Americans. They're killing Christians right now. And then we're going to somehow end sanctions with them. We're going to try to treat them as if they have a seat at the table. And Brenda, I know that you're 100% correct. He's not stupid. I don't think we are friends. I don't know that we are friends or will ever be friends, maybe, with the Syrian government. At least I sure hope not. I don't consider us friends with the Taliban, but yet the Taliban under Joe Biden came to the White House, didn't they? We have given billions of dollars to the Taliban, knowing what they're doing in Afghanistan. Now, of course, that was under Joe Biden. And I think I understand that Trump is just trying to keep the peace. But I would rather go over there and drop a bomb right in the middle of Syria and kill all of the terrorists. That would be my goal. And I'm kind of surprised, Trump is usually so anti-terrorism. Maybe the only thing I can guess is he feels that this is a situation we just can't win. Because we're getting to the point in this world where the terrorists outnumber the non-terrorists. As crazy as that sounds, radicalism has spread to such a degree that it is completely out of control. It's taken over Europe almost in its entirety. It's taken over, in so many different countries. And we here in the United States, we're facing it as well. We've done a good job controlling it. Under Biden, he opened the floodgates and let the terrorists in. Of course, Donald Trump, we're working on deporting the terrorists. But look how many terrorists came into this country under Joe Biden's watch. And we only know about the 20% that were apprehended at the border or seen at the border or questioned at the border. We don't know about the rest that have come into this country. And I really feel like we're at this tipping point to where maybe Donald Trump knows that we have lost the battle against jihadi extremism, and that the only way forward is to try to work out these peace deals. And you're going to hear some people say, well, he's doing it because of Israel, because right now Israel is bombing into Syria. It's a really bad situation. Of course, Israel had to withdraw some troops from Syria. So is Donald Trump fighting this battle for us? Is it for Israel? Is it for world peace? And is it worth it? What course of direction do we want to go in? Do we want to bomb the terrorists, drop that big MOAB right on top of Syria like we did with the Taliban back in the day in Afghanistan? Or do we just sit back and try to be friends? It's like, what do you do? And I know, Brenda, maybe friends isn't the best word to use, but I am not at all happy that we're negotiating with terrorists. To me, the thing we should be doing with terrorists is dropping bombs on terrorists, not negotiating with terrorists. And, I think it's okay sometimes. We're not always going to like everything Donald Trump does. And we have to tell ourselves, I know, to trust the process. He's doing this for the right reason. And it's a personal issue with me where I'm having such a difficult time thinking that these people are going through the streets of Syria. They're going door to door, pulling Christians out of their homes and killing them. These are the same people who killed Americans. Remember back during the war with Syria a while back, before Russia, by the way, stepped in, before Donald Trump stepped in back then. And what was happening is, you guys have all seen the video where they had people in cages burning them alive. That was these people that were doing that. The same people who are running the country of Syria right now, the same people we're talking about dropping sanctions against, those are the people who were burning people alive in cages, who were going from town to town, murdering anyone that didn't accept Sharia law. And they're the same people who have now turned Syria into the Islamic Caliphate, which we fought so hard against. And now all of a sudden, we're going to drop sanctions against them. We're going to try to normalize relations. They're going to potentially invite them to come visit the White House. It's infuriating to me, absolutely infuriating to me. And yes, and Brenda, that's just it. I am concerned because I feel like we're going in the opposite direction with terrorism. And as Crew said, and Crew knows, I know you guys don't know Crew, I don't know if you're still listening. This man knows exactly what he's talking about. He's been there. He has fought for this country. He knows his friends killed by these same people. It's so hard. Darlene says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Yes, no question about it. So I've been a little bit upset about that today when I heard the news. And I don't have as much of an issue with Saudi Arabia. You know, it's not necessarily about Qatar either, even though Qatar is a sponsor of terrorism. Qatar gave, I believe it was 20% of Hillary Clinton's campaign when she was running for president back in the day. 20% of her campaign funds came from Qatar. You know, it's pretty obvious which side which side they support, but yet they gave, you know, Trump this amazing welcome. And I'm going to show you a couple videos that you may or may not have seen. This is his motorcade coming into Qatar. You can take a look at this here. Talk about a welcome. When here's a closer. Here's another perspective. And I want you guys to take note that there are Cybertruck police cars leading the procession, which I absolutely love. Now that is a welcome. Here's some jets as he was coming in. These are Qatari jets were welcoming in Air Force One. Brenda said that's more welcome than people in the US gives him. I will tell you what, they gave him the royal treatment, you know, not only coming into Saudi Arabia, they gave him the royal treatment coming into Qatar. Qatar's a beautiful country. Saudi Arabia, both beautiful countries. We don't see a lot of what they have in their country because of their media and the way they feel about journalism and that type of thing. But people who have visited those areas, I wish Jay were on today because he would tell us a lot about Saudi Arabia, but these are both very beautiful countries. There were, if you saw, I don't want to play all the videos, but there were ceremonial sword dances they gave to Donald Trump. I think there were 3 of those in total. They welcomed him in to Qatar, gave him again such an amazing time. And I've listened to a lot of his speeches while he was there. I can't really say if there's anything too much of note, but one thing that I'm just going to play a tiny clip of it. And now this is the best thing to come out of this trip. We've talked about this so many times. I know you've talked about it, you've thought about it, that here in the United States, our infrastructure is a lot like a third world country. And Donald Trump's going to touch base on that. We talked about that when it came to Ukraine, that here we're spending all this money to build up Ukraine during and what will eventually be after this war with Russia. And Ukraine, even Ukraine is far ahead of us in the United States when it comes to infrastructure. Their gas stations, their gas stations are probably more modern and better than anything we have in this country, and that's in Ukraine. So it's pretty crazy. And I've got this little clip of Donald Trump talking about something that we have talked about before in this country, and that is, if I can find it here, man, I hope I uploaded. I'm not always good at uploading the right clips, but talking about, darn it, I probably have it here, but I don't see it. Let's see, is that it? So I don't want to play the wrong thing. Let me see if this is it.
Our
If
airports
not, I'll
are like
turn it
from a
off.
third world country. You land at LaGuardia, you land at Kennedy, you land at LAX, you land at Newark, and you come in from Dubai and Qatar, and you see these incredible, you come in from China, you see these incredible airports, and you land, we've become a third world country. So the worst of all things has happened. We owe $20 trillion, and we're a mess. We haven't even started. And we've spent $6 trillion.
He's right. Sorry, this is why I almost didn't show him. Trying not to cough. When I play the videos, I can mute myself and cough for a little bit. But yes, Mary, he did. He had a mobile McDonald's truck, and I saw that. It's kind of funny. He's known worldwide for his love of McDonald's. Isn't that funny? I absolutely love that. If you saw that mobile truck, it was probably nicer than the McDonald's restaurants we actually have in this country. And you know what, Brenda? I couldn't agree with you more about St. Louis Lambert Airport. I have flown in and out of many airports across the country, and some are nicer than others, but none of them are really nice. Not like what you see now. I have never been to Europe. I've never been, obviously, to Saudi Arabia or Qatar or some of these other countries. But, we can see video, we can see photos of what their infrastructure looks like. Their grocery stores, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, some show I was on, we talked and we showed the grocery stores in Europe. Some of the grocery stores in the Middle East just blow ours out of the water. And I feel like I like I live in some kind of slum going to the local Walmart looking at groceries, or to a local grocery store. I almost named one, but I'm not going to do that. But even our nicest grocery store is worse than their worst grocery store. And so it's kind of crazy, but our infrastructure is outdated. And not just our airports. Our airports are extremely outdated. Our air traffic control system, completely outdated. We have had shutdowns taking place all across the country, flights canceled, flights delayed because the air traffic control systems. You guys probably already read last week when I was out that there were air traffic controllers taking PTSD leave because there are times when their air traffic control system went down. And I can't remember, there just happened, what was it, last week, the week before, where the air traffic control system went down for a period of time, and these air traffic controllers had to guide. I mean, to think that's hundreds of lives in the balance. They had to guide these planes in, and they took PTSD leave because it was so stressful for them. I just heard the latest last night, an airport in Atlanta, the airport in Atlanta had to close down for a short time, not close. I'm just all mixed up today. They had to cancel flights, delay flights because their air traffic control system did not work. I know we're going to revamp it, but it cannot come soon enough. And it cannot come soon enough. Scott says, I bet its ice cream machine was working. You're probably right, Scott. I bet its ice cream machine was working, unlike all of our McDonald's here. I don't know why they can't keep the ice cream machine working. I wouldn't eat that ice cream anyway. Cruz says, Sun Tzu, keep enemies closer, yes, but do not get into bed with them. Trojan horses, they are, Crew. And as I was explaining a few minutes ago, these people killed probably people you fought with and people you knew, and they are our enemy. They're not ever going to be any different than our enemy, because their goal is to dominate, and whatever cost that is. I'm not saying they're not going to roll out the welcome for us, that they're not going to be very accommodating to us, that they're not going to invest in, like in the case of Saudi Arabia, $600 billion, into our country. It's of course they're going to. These nations are beyond wealthy. Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These countries are beyond wealthy, beyond any of our imaginations. And of course, they have beautiful infrastructure. But how is it that America, we're supposed to be the most powerful nation in the entire world, but we are literally, as far as infrastructure, a third world country? Now, I don't think Donald Trump can tackle all of that during his term, but we have got to get on the ball. Our railway system is so antiquated. You know, I mean, our bus system, our transportation system is so antiquated. It's quite honestly embarrassing. And Cruz says, what's worse? Training them throughout the years. How many have turned on our troops during, Crew? I've spent so much time talking on this show about exactly that. That, under the Obama administration, the same people that Crew fought against, the same people that were killing Americans over in Iraq. We turned around in Syria and we started funding them. That was Operation Timber Sycamore, in which we were in Syria saying under Obama that we're fighting against ISIS, when in fact that was never the case. Our goal was to oust Assad so that, of course, so that this same group who is now finally taken over in Syria so that they could take over. And Donald Trump, of course, stepped into office at that time. He canceled Timber Sycamore. It was the worst failed operation ever of the CIA, taken under Obama's term. And it's hard to believe that under Obama, we funded and trained these terrorists. And I'll tell you what, under Timber Sycamore, I can't remember how many we trained. It was a few hundred, but in the end, only one remained loyal. The rest of them all turned on us. This is truth. It's fact. You can research it, look it up. They all turned against our troops except for one. And it got so bad that our special forces had to flee and seek a safe passage into Turkey because the people they trained and funded were trying to kill them. I mean, you can't even make it up. You cannot trust these people. You cannot trust these people. They might seem like our friends. They might be giving us this beautiful jet to use, and they might be doing their best to work out relations with Donald Trump. But in the end, they want to dominate us, and don't think they can't. Don't think they can't do it. And it's a crazy situation. And I know that Donald Trump is a very smart man. And I know, despite the outward appearances of, and I know he likes the Crown Prince bin Salman. I do too. I think he's done great things in Saudi Arabia. He's given women rights that they didn't have before. He allows music to be played. He allows people to go to the movie theaters, all things that his father would never have allowed. He has certainly, they call him progressive, in the country there, but progressive in a good way. So there are good things also happening. There are good things happening, but we've got to watch our backs. We cannot let our guard down. And I get it. Trump is a smart man. He will get it all sorted out. We've only got a few minutes left, but I wanted to, outside of that, as you guys know, the Joe Biden is on the tour circuit. So I want to talk about that for a minute, and then I'm going to show you a video that came out of the P. Diddy trial yesterday, because that is ongoing. I haven't really heard any big bombshells yet. I think bombshells are coming, and we'll see how far they let that go. Crew, you're asking a great question, and I meant to bring that up yesterday. Would you trust flying in that plane? And okay, so let's set the scene for that. That Qatar, who I don't consider to be our friend at all, not at all. Qatar is gifting us with this $400 million 747 jumbo jet that is supposed to fly our president of the United States around the world. And I understand why they want it. It flies at a higher altitude. It's very quiet, quieter than most planes. It's completely outfitted in gold fixtures. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very roomy, much larger than Air Force One. Air Force One, they've been trying to replace it for quite some time. So I do wonder if Air Force One is even as safe as it should be. But however, I can you trust it? Can you trust Qatar in outfitting this plane? Are there going to be bugs everywhere? Are we going to have the ability to determine if there are bugs, and are we going to be able to find them? We don't know what type of technology they're using over there at any time, or what else is planted in that plane. Could they decide at any moment that, hey, they're just going to take the plane out? We don't know. Now, I know that Trump's administration is right on that, on top of all of these things. They obviously trust it, but it really worries me. Mary, I get so tired of the Trump basher. Saw on FB this morning they were trying to say Donald Trump is having mental issues with dementia. It is beyond ridiculous, Mary. Trump, if there's anything that man is, he does not have dementia. And he is an absolutely fantastic president. Mary says, why couldn't Boeing get the job done? Mary, that's a good question. And I don't know if I have the answer to that. I know that for years now, I've seen signed documents from Pam Bondi, believe it or not, who was working a long time ago, actually with Qatar on a plane. So maybe this plane came out of that talk from years ago. I don't know. But I do know that there are a lot of documents out there that you can go and read where they've talked about the safety of the current plane they're using as Air Force One. And they've needed an upgrade for a really long time. But yeah, Mary says, could they take control of the plane? The problem is, Mary, is we just don't know. I am 100% positive that Donald Trump's administration is addressing exactly that before accepting the plane. They're going to go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb, no question about it. But the thing is that sometimes countries have technology maybe we don't know about. I don't believe Qatar is really known, for their technology, but they're a very wealthy country and they can certainly purchase any technology they want. And any country would be smart if they had that type of control over Donald Trump, because he is somebody that is absolutely not controlled. As we all know, he's not controlled. I don't see Qatar doing that, but who knows really, because these people, they're not our friends. But we just have to trust the Trump administration is, they know every fear and more than we could even think of when it comes to this plane. So I'm sure they're looking it over with a fine-tooth comb, of course. And when it comes to Trump bashing, of course they're bashing Trump. What was it? We found out the interest rate. Was it the interest rate or the economy? I know there was some big news that came out yesterday where it caused a lot of these financial folks to backtrack and say, okay, well, maybe the economy is looking a little bit better than we expected it to. Maybe we're not heading into, a recession or a depression, because maybe Donald Trump's politics, they were calling it Trumponomics, maybe it actually does work. It was kind of surprising to see some of these companies like JP Morgan backtrack, because of course before they were all screaming from the rooftops, oh my God, depression, it's going to be worse than the Great Depression with Donald Trump and his policies and his tariffs and blah, 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 blah. Nope, things are looking pretty darn good, aren't they? Things are looking pretty darn good. And it's going to keep looking better. I was talking about something, I don't remember what it was, so I'm going to backtrack here. Joe Biden, speaking of health, world country. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to play that. Let's back out of that. These look very similar on my screen. This is what I was trying to pull up. Joe Biden on the tour circuit. Now, what I don't understand, this man couldn't give a presidential speech to save his life. Now, here he is on the tour circuit. I haven't seen any video yet of him speaking, but could you imagine? You're right, Mary, it is inflation. They projected it to be, I think, I don't know. I was planning on talking about it and then I changed my mind. I know it was maybe 2.3, then they were expecting to be 3.4 and it came out to be 3.3 or 2. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know what I'm talking about. But Joe Biden's out on the speaking tour, and as they're saying, oh, standing room only. I hope some people share some video of Joe Biden talking. I would love to see this man giving speech. And what's so funny is that the entire time he was president or pretending to be president, he never once, and no doctor released a health report on this man. No one, never once turned over his physical. They never talked about it. And trust me, I researched it to the hilt. It never happened. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, Biden has a nodule or something like that in his prostate. I'm like, okay, so what about his brain? What about his cognitive ability? I don't care about the man's prostate. But they don't want to talk about that now, do they? Because if they did, they'd have to admit we were lying. Charles says, I don't fear Qatar. They allowed U.S. military operations for the Gulf War, and we still have zero forward operating base for our military to this day. Yeah, I agree, Charles, to that expect. My problem is I don't trust anyone in the Middle East because they are very much against us. They're against what we do. They're against what we stand for. But I'm not saying they've not been helpful to us, and I'm not saying they've not been a friend to us in some circumstances. I never really worried as much about Qatar as I have some of the other countries. You can go to Qatar under some limited travel, and you can go to Saudi Arabia under some limited travel. But in the end, most of these people don't really like Americans. They don't like what we stand for. They don't like our Western culture. Qatar, I think, is less about that than some of the other countries. And my biggest problem with Donald Trump is absolutely not Qatar. I don't care that he's taken this plane. I really don't. To me, it's a nothing. Take the plane, use it, hope for the best. I don't care. But what I do care about is us having a relationship with Syria under the new government. I have a real big problem with that because those people are terrorists. They're not diplomats, they're terrorists. And I'm going to show this photo to you one more time for anyone that missed it. This guy here, this guy, he is the same guy as this guy. These are the same people. So a terrorist like this is him. This is how he really looks. He can clean up and he can put a suit on and look like this, but he is always going to be this guy. This guy is always going to be this guy. And I don't care how you dress him up, he is always going to be a terrorist. In my view, we do not negotiate with terrorists. We don't drop sanctions against terrorists. At one point, this guy was one of the top wanted people here in our country, but now all of a sudden we're okay with this guy. And I know there's a plan. We got to trust the plan, but I don't like the plan, and I don't have to like the plan. But we'll see where things go. We'll just have to see how it works out. But yeah, as far as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, I'm not too worried about either of those countries. Syria is a whole nother story. So I wanted to play this P. Diddy video for you guys really quick before we head out. Trial ongoing. This is the video of P. Diddy. This is unedited. One of his freak off parties. There's no sound. He's running through the hotel. This is Cassie Ventura, his girlfriend at the time, who was trying to leave during one of the parties. This is a video that was played at the trial yesterday. And as you can see, kicking her, throwing her down, dragging her back to his room. No one does anything to stop this. I'm kind of surprised that he never drops his towel, by the way. That must be like the best towel on the planet. At no point does his towel fall off. Awful. Absolutely awful. There's really nothing more there that happens. That's the unedited version that came out during the trial. Again, P. Diddy physically assaulting his girlfriend at the time, Cassie. Absolutely unbelievable. I realize he's not down on the ground punching her face or anything like that, but it's probably happened. You can look at this video and guess what has probably happened to her. Her testimony, I didn't think was too mind-blowing. More of it, I thought, seemed kind of personal, where she was talking about how T. Diddy, or P. I called him T. Diddy. P. Diddy, I'm really on a roll today with my mispronunciations. How P. Diddy would use his security team and his assistant to cause her problems. They would come in, they would take her jewelry, or they would take her vehicle, or they would kick her out of her apartment, or they would come over and, talk to her about different things and go back and, of course, report it to P. Diddy. Of course they would. She'd be crazy if they think they didn't. The only thing I can say about this situation, first of all, we can't ever blame the victim. That is one thing we can never do. But I know it's easy to look at these situations and think, well, why did she stay? Why didn't she leave? If he was abusive to her, why did she stay in his home? Why did she stay in one of his apartments? Why did she accept his vehicle? Why did she accept his jewelry? But that we can ask a man or woman who's been abused. And I think we're always going to come up with the same answer, and that is that people, when you're in an abusive situation, it's not that easy to get out of. It's just not that easy. And it's easy to think, well, she could have just got up and walked away. But when you hear her testimony and you hear, of course, and read about the things that P. Diddy has done, it wouldn't have been as easy to just get up and walk away. One of the people that he's associated with is no longer with us. How many other people? Maybe some more of this information, of course, will come out during the trial as we go along. And Mary says, have a great day, everyone. Mary, you and me both. I've got to make a run for it as well. And I wanted to throw that video in about P. Diddy because it is absolutely shocking. And people are martyring him, saying, why is P. Diddy on trial? He didn't do anything. He just had some fun parties. It was so much more than fun parties. Please don't think that. And I know you wouldn't. It's so much more than fun parties. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg in this story. So I can't wait to see how this trial falls out. I'm getting ready to start coughing again. So I'm going to make a run for it. I will not be back tomorrow or Friday. I did my best this week, but I've got to take a little bit of a break. And we'll pick it back up on Monday, and be a lot more to talk about between now and then. Thanks for joining me today. I apologize, sir. I'm not putting out the best show this week because my body is not cooperating as much as I had hoped that it would. And it's kind of got me distracted. But I do hope you guys all have a really great rest of your week, a really good weekend. We'll be back on Monday, hopefully feeling better, doing better, and talking about a lot more great stuff. Hopefully you guys have a good time. Thank you so much again for joining me. I'm Tabitha with Tabs on Tap.